Hmm. So I don't. Oh, okay, okay. All right, I'm here. All right, we got 29 viewers. Oh, 30 viewers. Okay. All right, I see you guys. Welcome. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. Oh, okay. And Nick is here. Hey. Oh, I can't hear you.
My
Oh,
microphone
I
was
can hear
muted.
you now. All
Hey,
right.
man. Sorry about that. I got my times mixed up.
No problem. No problem. You're
So,
here now. This is so cool. Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for your help with this technology. I am
yeah,
just
man.
completely inept. So I really appreciate you helping me out with that. I'm still kind of learning how to use this new software. So, guys, bear with me here, but it looks like we're up and running on both Substack and Twitch. So, we're going to go ahead and get into it here. So, I'm going to do my little intro. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Will. You can call me Contraband, and this is the Contraband Wagon where I'm changing the conversation on race. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another conversation series conversation, my 145th one with guest Nick Paro. Nick, welcome to the Contraband Wagon.
Thanks, Will. It's really good to be here. I'm excited to have this conversation today and just hang out for a while.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
going to be
Well,
fun.
you got 2 hours with me, and I hope you don't regret it.
No, man, I won't.
Okay.
Um, I won't regret
Um,
it. I'm going to enjoy this. I love having conversations, long form conversations like this. Um, I actually think people want this more than seems we're made to believe. Like people keep saying, like, "Oh, Americans only want," or people only want 30-second sound bites and short form. I feel like that's wrong. I feel like
yeah.
people just want to actually have long form content and hang out. So,
Yeah,
um,
I think a lot of people get confused with what does numbers and what people want, right?
yeah,
So. Yeah, I think you're right. People are starved for this kind of deep conversation that can only really manifest over a significant period of time. That's why I always create 2 hour long conversations for these because we got to dig deep, and that takes some effort and some time. So I'm really grateful for you, agreeing to be here with me and to do that deep dive, brother.
yeah, man. And thanks for asking me. I find it really awesome to be asked and to be able to talk about it. Like, I actively push back against a lot of the shit that's going on right now. And I'm excited to talk about how I got here and how I got to this point in my life um, and what's led me to some of the positive changes I've gone through.
Yes. And that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for, the trials and tribulations and the positives. So we're going to jump into it here. And I'm going to start, Nick, by asking you the same question that I ask every guest who appears on the Contraband Wagon. And I'll give our audience and yourself a little bit of background on that question again, just so you can have it in your mind. And the question
Okay.
is, what is your evolution of race consciousness? In other words, when did you first become aware that there was this thing called race, that it grouped people into different categories based on their skin color, that it represented a false human hierarchy that ranked people according to their skin color, and that this hierarchy could have an outsized influence on people's life experiences and outcomes? So, what was your evolution of race consciousness, my man?
So that's a great question. And I love that you frame it openly. So my evolution of race consciousness probably really starts in the very beginning of my life. So I'm from Vermont originally. I do not live there now, but I'm from Vermont originally, which historically is the whitest state in the union. Um, and so I did not grow up with a lot of diversity in terms of skin color or in terms of heritages. It was a lot of French Canadians. We did have a lot of Native American culture because the Iroquois and the Abenaki are still present in Vermont, and their cultural lineage is still very present in that area. So Vermonters honor that tradition a lot, and bring it a lot. Make sure it's still alive. So I've always been aware of it, of race consciousness, but I was never exposed to a lot of racial diversity until I got to college. And I told you earlier, I think while we were talking, when we were getting ready to discuss about the show, that I think I had like uh, two black kids in my school, and that was the diversity we had. Like, um, and I feel really fortunate that I actually had non-white kids in my school growing up for an area that is known for not having very much diversity. Um, it gave me a start on life where I actually knew and saw people that were different than me. Um, but I also grew up in a Jewish family, Jewish and French Canadian. My dad's side of the family is French Canadian. My mom's side of the family is very Jewish. Like escaped from Russia and Belarus to the U.S. pre World War II. Jewish, so landed in New York, spread out from there. Um, but the culture we grew up in, my mom always taught us, and my grandparents always taught us, was that diversity is to be celebrated, and that that everybody has value just on being like I'm really fortunate because I grew up in a very stable and very conscious household, who taught us really well. My parents are incredible parents, mom, dad. When you listen to this, because I figure you will, I know you're subscribed to me and you listen to a lot of my stuff, is you did really well for all three of us, for me and my brothers. You did really well for us, and thank you for continuing to do well for us, because they're both still around. And so I guess my racial awareness in terms of what it meant didn't hit until college. Um, but in terms of having awareness of others, like I knew there were different races, and I knew that we did some really shitty things in the US, because US history was a big part of um, my development as well. And so I've been exposed to US history, but not through just a lens of white supremacy US history, but through a lens of a dad who actually studies US history and takes it for what it is, for good, bad, ugly, everywhere in between. And he reads all sorts of different opinions. Um, and and so he taught us really well on that side, as well as the diversity and to respect diversity. And so I got it early, but I had some of my own issues growing up. I've had to face privilege as I've gotten older, and realize what privilege really means, and to see where I have it compared to others, either purposely or unexpectedly. Um, and college showed me that a lot, because I went to college outside of Vermont. Um, I went to Pittsburgh. I went to Carnegie Mellon University. I studied music theory and composition. I'm proud to say I have a degree from Carnegie Mellon. I'm not proud to say that they support a lot of the tech fascist policies that are going on, but that doesn't really surprise me, with who they like, what they do. Why did my camera just do that? Interesting camera, why you did that. That is not where I'm at. Let me turn that off so it balances. Okay. Anyway, but that was really where I was exposed to racial diversity, um, and a lot of different cultures in a lot of ways. Um, but yeah, I think that was a really long-winded answer. Um,
Not that wasn't even close to as long as most people go, to be honest.
I could go more. I'm happy to go
Well, hang
more
on.
into it too.
Well, we will.
Let's
We
zoom
will.
out.
Yeah, let's start with what you've already given us because
Yeah, man.
you gave us a lot here. So, I like to summarize what people say just to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so you grew up in Vermont, one of the whitest, traditionally whitest states in the union here, and
We also, while I was growing up, fun fact, while I was still growing up, there were more sheep in the state of Vermont than people. That finally got surpassed in like 2016 or something. There were
wow,
statistically, I think, more people than sheep in the state of Vermont, or found. I was like, well, that's kind of a cool fact now.
yeah,
We
that
did it.
is,
We did it, guys.
yeah. All right, people are
Anyway,
taking over Vermont. I got it. And
actually, no. When as I got into high school, and we'll definitely go into this too, is Vermont became a very large refugee community for, I believe it was the Congo, um,
mm,
and a ton of families moved and came there and still live there, and are no longer refugees. They're citizens, they're residents, they're happy in their communities. They integrated and they made like thriving communities even more thriving. Like they added to the food culture, the music culture, the just the culture in the state in a good way. And I think a lot of people were really happy to just have new folks around.
very cool. Yeah, we'll circle back to the
Yeah,
Congolese immigration that you're just talking about, and um, so Vermont, low diversity, but still respecting Native American culture. So you
yeah,
grew up seeing that, and you grew up in a Jewish family that really kind of instilled values in you from an early age about respecting people's humanity, that everyone has value. Your father was a U.S. history kind of buff who was kind of sharing and reading and sharing and talking with you about U.S. history
and
um,
living it.
and living it. And so okay, now what I found interesting about your story, right, is that you were like, okay, so I have these experiences, with my family, being taught these values, learning about U.S. history, but it really wasn't until you went to college that the kind of deeper understanding of racial hierarchy started to come into play as you were actually meeting people from diverse backgrounds at a higher pitch,
Yeah.
and I guess reflecting upon what you were learning from these people and the differences between how you grew up, how they grew up, privileges that you have that they don't have, and started doing this kind of comparison game. Am I on the right track here?
Oh, absolutely. So let me expand a little on like I did get exposed to some cultures more so than I could have from Vermont because I played on a traveling soccer team as well. And so I was very fortunate to be in a stable household that made good money and was able to put us into sports and music and allow us to do the extracurriculars. And I'm really thankful for that because I met a lot of people through it. I made a lot of really good experiences and I got to travel a lot. So I played um, Premier League soccer traveling growing up and on the Olympic development team for Vermont for my age group and got to play against the other states in the regional tournaments. We never made it very far. We never had the funding or the training abilities that like say New Jersey does, where they have a very dense and high population of folks who they can choose from a larger pool of people, so they have more statistical likelihood of getting one of those outlying good players. And I don't know if you remember, it was in early mid 2000s, Freddie Adu. He was a young black soccer player from, I think it was New Jersey, my age bracket. I got to play against him. Holy fuck, is that kid good? Like, that dude rocked us. And we got dominated. I think they took him out. Like, I think I remember playing against him, and then they like took him out, and we got rocked that game. And we were like, well, yeah, that's what happens when you play against someone who's about to go onto a national team.
Yeah,
And
that's a good experience though, getting rocked by someone at that level, like it has to happen to everybody no matter how good you are.
oh,
So
it humbles you real fucking quick. And I played goalkeeper
oh,
in
yeah,
soccer, so
that's tough too.
when you lose,
Yeah.
you feel it like it's on your shoulders a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. I got to grow up in a really cool time. I got to watch like the US national team play Jamaica at Gillette Stadium in Boston for a World Cup qualifying match.
Wow.
So I got to see cultures, and I got to experience what it looked like to go to an international soccer game in high school and see the Jamaican national team. Like, that's super cool.
Oh, yeah.
I look back on that and I go, that's pretty fucking cool. Like,
Yeah.
not everybody gets to do that. And I got to see a culture play soccer and see their fans come out. I didn't get to interact with them in that way. But then once I got, like I said, once I got into college was when I really got to interact in person with people on a much deeper level, because you spend 4 years in dormitories or fraternity houses together. You're going to get to know the people you're surrounded by and who they are and where they come from. And I found out real quick what caste systems look like. um and I am not in the upper caste, by any means. I found that out real quick in college, and I was like, okay, like I know what it means to be mid tier, and I know what it means to see like super wealthy.
Hmm.
Um, I hadn't really experienced really poor at that point in my life. I have since then, so we can definitely go into that later in the conversation too. Is I've been to poor, and I've been to like the moments of, are you going to have a family when you come home? Because it's the idea of, we don't have any money, and how do we function, and where do we go, and what do we do? Like, we've been that poor. We've had to choose between gas and food so that I could go to work, and it was gas we had to buy so that I could make more money for us to buy food. Like, I've been fucking poor, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Um, and that was after getting out of the army too, with disability benefits. And like, we were poor as shit. And I can't imagine what other people go through who don't have those type of benefits. Um, but when I was in college, I joined a fraternity, and I was in a school of music, and I was in an international school, a school that actually outreaches to international students and wants to do student visas and use their student visas. And so I met kids from India, I met kids from Greece, I met kids from other parts of the world, that I became friends with. I became fraternity brothers with. We had some fairly racist kids in my fraternity. We had a couple black kids in our fraternity, which was fairly rare because there was almost no black community that joined any of the Greek community, which I understand why. Like,
Yeah.
it's not very welcoming to black people. It is pretty unwelcoming in a lot of ways. And that's another thing that I got to experience, and I get to reflect back on and go, wow, there was some racist shit that happened in that fraternity, and I'm glad I did not participate in a majority of it. I will say, because I'm open and honest and transparent, is I did at times, because it was groupthink, and I reflect back on it and I go, wow, that was shitty. Like, I'm so glad I'm not that person. I'm not that person, because it's angry and it's gross, and I don't want to live in anger all the time. I deal with it enough. Like, I go to therapy for anger issues, so like, I I understand anger. I don't want to live there. So yeah, but college was where I interacted, and I found I was not the upper caste. Um, but I became really good friends with folks who were between my mid tier bracket, middling folks who actually had to work jobs while we were in school. I worked two jobs while I was in college. I My fraternity brother right next to me, who lived in the same house as me, who lived when our fraternity got booted off campus for something that we shouldn't have been booted off campus for, but we can get into that too. He had a allowance of 5,000 a month for spending. That was not including his rent and his utilities and everything else that his parents paid for.
That's wild.
He got 5K a month.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yes. I was scraping by on like 100, 200 bucks a week on top of like what I had to pay for groceries and everything else. And like I relied on my parents in a lot of ways. The same, I had a stipend that my parents allowed me to, but they took out loans for it comparatively. And they took out retirement or things that they were gifted from my grandparents. He didn't. His parents were just handing him money. We're just like, here you go. He had a job lined up. He didn't. The only reason this kid went to school was because his parents told him he wouldn't be able to get the job that they have lined up for him if he didn't have his undergraduate degree. And they would cancel that job for him and make him do something else. And in India, if you get thrown down a caste, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like fucked. And he didn't want to have that happen. So he went to college, but he got to party the whole time. He was C's get degrees. Actually, it was D's get degrees for him, which was fine because he got his degree.
Got his degree, got the job waiting for him. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked my butt off and I'm still paying on student loan debt. And I couldn't get into the master's degree program I wanted to because it was way too expensive. And then I joined the Army after that. And that's where I got even more exposure to cultural differences, obviously, because it's the Army. But college, there's so much we can talk about in there, especially around my fraternity.
I actually want to take a second before we get into your college to even go back. And I did mention that we were going to do that. And yeah, now hearing you talk, I want to do it even more because a lot of times, Nick, the whole reason, actually, I should talk about this first. The whole reason why I do this show and why I create space for these conversations is because I recognized when I was looking at media focused on the subject of race that a lot of the conversations that were happening were either very surface level conversations or conversations that didn't really necessarily make space for people's personal experiences with race. And it got me thinking, where does that space exist? Where do people have an opportunity to reflect upon their experiences racially? Is it at home? I would say most people in the home do not get to have those conversations. I think a lot of people, just like there's that whole don't talk about politics and religion at the dinner table thing. Race doesn't even need a little phrase like that. It's something that people just naturally don't talk about. Or maybe you'll talk about it as a warning, or oftentimes it'll be brought up with just pure racism coming out of parents or siblings' mouth or a family member's mouth, right? Where does it happen? Does it happen at church? No. A lot of pastors are preaching white supremacy from the pulpit. There was just those dozens of American clergy people who were in Israel learning about how to protect Israel and bring it back to their congregations in America. So it's not happening at church for the most part. I'm sure there are plenty of people doing great work, but they're in the minority. And does it happen in school? Well, no, not when the United States has several states have passed laws making sure that students' feelings don't get injured when they're having conversations on race, and that we don't necessarily dive into the details about the brutality of a system of white supremacy. So we have all these places that are typically places where you would think would be places for inquiry, would be places where people can feel safe and talk about whatever, but that's just not our reality. That's not the reality that the vast majority of people are living. Now, your experience was a little bit different because you had those gold star parents who were like, no, we're going to teach our kid values. We're going to teach our kid history, and we're going to make sure that he has an understanding of how to show up in the world in a way that we can be proud of and that he can be proud of. And yeah, what an amazing, incredible upbringing for you to have that. But yet, despite having that, right? For you, your perception of your experience is that you didn't really get a more deep understanding of how race actually impacts people at the individual level until you started meeting people from various backgrounds and really digging into their life stories in college, right?
Yeah.
So the reason I want to focus on the part that comes before that, all right, is because based on your own story, you learned a lot about US history, which means you learned a lot about race and you learned a lot about racism before college, right? And so my question for you is, can you think about any event that happened, any situation, whether it happened to you, whether it happened to someone else, whether you observed it, you were about to go there when you were thinking about your fraternity experience, but I want you to try thinking even further back, because typically there is some kind of event, something that happens where you either see racism or you see something that maybe upon reflection can be recognized as part of the racial hierarchy coming into your life and like something occurring. So is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Yes, there is. As you were talking about it, sorry, I won't say the individual's name. I'll call them T. So when I was younger, I had a friend, probably not really ever a friend, but he was a friend for a little while, named T. And T and I it was we were in elementary school. Was it elementary? Middle school. We were in middle school, still very young.
Okay.
And it was in the late 90s, early 2000 era. We were putting covering textbooks with cardboard paper. And we had taken like cardboard bags, cut them and folded them so that we had a cover for the textbooks so that they didn't get ruined and you could write US history or whatever on it. And he was putting swastikas on it. And I didn't really think about it too much immediately until I got home and my mom looked at mine and it had one and she said, "What the fuck?" Basically, what the fuck is that? And we removed it. And we talked about it. And I was taught more so the history at that point of really like what that symbology meant. But it was a child moment, so we didn't stop being friends. It wasn't until a couple years later, and we had stopped being friends with each other. We were friendly. We would say hi in the hallways if we saw each other. Was in high school a few years later. He showed up to the high school Halloween party dressed as Hitler. And I was like, well, I know who you are now. And I really know what that means in high school. And I really knew what that meant because I was raised not in Judaism as going to synagogue, and we didn't go to church. We went to synagogue for a few years growing up, Um, when I was 5, my grandfather died, and the synagogue didn't offer any communal support to us afterwards. He wasn't from the same synagogue, but we were part of the synagogue in the community, and they knew he died. But the next time that they called us was asking my mom to donate to the synagogue, and she was like, "I'm never donating again, and we're never coming back." Um, and so we didn't. And then we never went to church after that, and my parents left it up to us. So I never got raised in a church society. So I feel really lucky, to be honest, because I have not had to deconstruct faith in the same way a lot of other people have. So I don't have a lot of the same faith-based biases that so many people do, because I didn't have to experience it. My parents gave us all the choice whether we wanted to go to church or not. And I never really did. I was like, I don't want to waste my Sunday or Saturday. And two, I don't want to waste my fucking day and be told what to think and how to think. I get told what to think about 5 days a week. I don't need to be doing it 6 plus evenings and other shit. And religion is at home. And that's what my parents said was, if you have faith, it's at home. That's what the Bible teaches. That's what the Torah teaches. Like, faith is private. Faith is for you and God, and it's a personal relationship. And when I tried to speak to God as a kid who is ADHD and who is neurodivergent and who has a fairly high sense of morality, and often it took me a while to realize how to be like truly empathetic, because I needed to teach myself how to do it. But when I did, was it's easy to be empathetic and do all of those things, but like, wow, am I so thankful I don't have that trauma of religion. But yeah, go back to the heart of your question is, it was middle school when I first really saw it in person. And I don't know if T intentionally did it with me, because he knew I was Jewish. Like, people knew I was Jewish. I didn't hide the fact that we were. Our school celebrated Hanukkah and Christmas for kids in the community, because there were both Jewish and Christian and Catholic and Protestant and whatever, all the denominations of Christianity and Catholicism that there are. I don't mean to demean any of them. My communities around me were very, very communal based. It was the town was the church. And so it wasn't really a bad mix growing up in terms of that. But I didn't have any traumas of a pastor or somebody telling me I had to think a certain way. I learned about Israel for a few years, but I don't have the same relationship to Israel as a lot of other Jewish people did, because I stopped going to Saturday school when I was 5. Like, when I went to kindergarten and started primary education, really, I was really no longer going to a religious-based learning institute of any sort. So I was just in the public education system. And again, I was fortunate growing up having really good teachers, not just my dad, but also those around me who were not a parent. Our teachers were great growing up. They showed a lot of compassion towards other people. We didn't have as much homophobia, I think, looking back in my community, as a lot of others did. We had kids in my class who were openly gay before. I mean, Vermont, it was cool. It was easy to be gay in Vermont. We were the first state to legalize same-sex, not marriage, but civil unions, I think it was. And so we had that distinction privilege of being a little more progressive. I think that's one of the things Vermont is fairly known for, is being this little progressive state. It does have a lot of regressives in it, in various areas, just like everywhere in the country does. There's a mix of progressives and regressives all over the place. And I had one in my town, and I didn't even know. I don't know if this kid purposely targeted me or knew or even cared, but just drew swastikas.
Yeah. And like, who knows, right? Because I mean, he learned from somewhere to draw that swastika, right? And
Oh yeah.
so, I mean, I'm sure it was part of his household, part of his upbringing, and
And I spent
somebody,
time at his household.
yeah.
Um, I never saw anything
Yeah.
specifically that I can remember,
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Because I
but I
think
was
that
also too young to probably realize some of the things that I saw. Like
maybe not.
looking
You know,
on
maybe
it, like he had an
there was
iron
that.
cross belt, big iron cross belt buckle. Like
Okay.
that, that's pretty signish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking back
Pretty
on it.
overt there. Yeah. But
Um,
all
yeah,
I want to say about that is that, you know, we have this image sometimes, and I believe this is part of the mythology of white supremacy, that white supremacists need to have Hitler's portrait on their wall, that, you know, swastikas need to be everywhere, that, you know, they're openly going to, um, you know, claim that they are white supremacists and they'll be easy to identify. But in the reality, um, you know, before present day, where like a lot of these white supremacists are openly, you know, speaking white supremacist talking points, even still cowardly, I would say,
yeah,
and not directly in a lot of times. But yeah, a lot of white supremacists in present day are kind of behind a veil of their own creation, right? Because a veil of shame, I would say, or at least
yeah.
should be shame, right? Like they recognize that their views are still not accepted enough that they can just go around and do whatever. At least some of them, people still do it, right? People still
They
on
still
camera.
wear masks. They
Oh
still
yeah,
wear masks. Like the other day, this weekend in Little Rock, the Blood Tribe neo-Nazi gang and group was standing outside somewhere in Little Rock protesting. I got my friend Evan Fields sent me that news, and I was like, "Fuck, that's gross."
yeah,
But they were still wearing masks. They're still afraid to show their faces, which means we can still win against white supremacy because they still know that what they're doing is socially unacceptable for now,
yeah. For
because
now,
they have to wear masks. And if we make it personally unacceptable in real time, then they'll still continue to wear their masks because these people don't want to be outed as fucking Nazis. Not yet. Not until
yeah,
they get freedom to do it. But they don't have that freedom, and people are willing to call them out. And I just want to remind people that apple cider vinegar in a water balloon is non-violent, and it makes someone stink and you can't get it out of their clothing or their hair or their skin. And so when that individual shows up after it's been on the news that neo-Nazis had apple cider water balloons thrown at them, everybody around them will know who the fuck that neo-Nazi is. You can out that person without ever having to do anything violent.
well, there's your strategy, guys.
Just remember, apple cider vinegar and water balloons. Don't
Yeah,
do things that hurt people, but out someone
yeah,
like that. There needs to be personal consequence for these fuckheads, and they're
it's
still
true.
wearing
You know,
masks for a reason.
but Nick, I feel like it's very important for us
Yeah,
to, like, you know, draw the whole picture, right? So yeah,
yeah,
we've got these masked people, these masked cowards coming out protesting or whatever it is they're doing. But we've also got people without masks. We've got regular
yeah,
citizens out here on video, people recording them. They're knowing they're being recorded, saying the most vile racist stuff, knowing that this is going to get out into the public sphere. So there are people out there who still are doing this regardless of the consequences that's come. These people often lose their job. You know, people put them on blast on social media. But we also see what happens is that many of them get GoFundMe's in their name and then you know, end up getting tons of donations. You know, the one of the most famous people recently was the woman who attacked that autistic black kid at the park and became almost a millionaire because of
yeah.
donations, you know, after calling this kid, a 5-year-old, the N-word.
What we need to be able to do is impose like a legal cost against that. Is if someone's going to do a GoFundMe, that's fraud. Like that's fraud and defamation against that person, and we should be able to push back and as a community. Like I think that's maybe part of the responsibility of people with privilege is to be able to say, hey, we've got the money, or we know the organizations that can do it, and we do this, and we say no, You don't get to grift like that and then defraud somebody, defame somebody, and then get away with it. Like,
Yeah,
we
definitely that should
can.
happen, but
That should happen, but
it
it's not.
yeah, it
It's
didn't. And
not. That's the fucking problem, isn't it?
yeah, I try to not talk about what should happen because
Yeah.
it distracts from what is happening, and what is
Yeah.
happening is a little bit more important, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, like what's happening is that she got that money, right? And she,
Yeah.
that's what happened. And there were people, particularly this one black woman who I'm reminded of from hearing what you just said there, who talked about different strategies to make sure that she didn't get that money, to take legal action, to force the company to do something, which they did do something for the next person who came up. Once she got into the six figures of her GoFundMe, I don't know if she got that money or whatnot, but another woman in a coffee shop who was, using racial slurs and just abusing some of the workers.
So ugly.
Yeah, just disgusting stuff. And she did get over six figures before GoFundMe shut down the fundraiser for her. But who knows whether she'll get that money or not, whether it'll be back or not. We don't know. But
also, why are we waiting till six figures GoFundMe? Like,
yeah,
you could easily just make a stand as a company and say, no, we're not going to tolerate this, and just turn it off. There's other platforms these people can use that you don't have to be a part of it. Like GoFundMe as a company, you could make the choice to not allow this in part of your policy, to not allow this type of grift.
Again,
not what you should be doing. Yeah. I know. And they aren't doing it. That's the part that gets me the most is these people know.
Yeah.
They know the lessons of history. They're smart. They're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm just, fuck you people.
I know. It makes you angry.
What
right?
The hell, guys? We could have nice things.
Yeah, but we have to accept. We really have to accept that
radical
these people
acceptance
don't want us to have nice things, and that they're out here, they're doing what they're doing. And, part of what I'm trying to get people to do is push past thinking how things should be, push past thinking about, oh, it should be this shouldn't be happening. There's something beyond that, which is our own power, right?
Yeah.
To do things. And that's really where I want people's focus to be, and I think that's kind of the upbringing that your parents were kind of pushing for you when they were teaching you about values, when they were teaching you about the worth of human life, and ultimately they're preparing you to stand up in your own life for humanity, right? Against injustice. And here you are on my live stream. So it seems like that was time well spent by them. Unless
it seems to have worked.
Yeah.
And I know that it has worked too, because my son has stood up for a friend of his who is black after two kids in the community said the N-word toward him. And he was prepared to defend his friend, and did. And he came back to our house, and that was where he felt safe to hang out for the day. That said a lot to me. That he felt safe to come to my house and hang out, and that my son stood up to some little kids who said the N-word at this boy and said, no, that's gross. No, you're wrong.
Of course he would feel safe at your house after that, right? Why? Because your son showed him that he was safe with him. So, this reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my friends, a racialized white man here in North Carolina. And he was working at a grocery store, and he said he was having trouble getting along with some of the employees, which were all racialized black people. And then his girlfriend came to visit him at the grocery store, and his girlfriend was a black woman. And they saw him interact with his girlfriend left, and he said he noticed a change in how he was being interacted with by his coworkers. And I had to tell him, well, brother, it's because by them seeing you're in a relationship with a black woman, they're realizing that you're safe.
Yeah.
You gave them a signal that you are a safe person to be around. So of course they're going to let their guard down around you now, because now they feel safe with you. And that was like a real big revelation for him. He couldn't understand this idea of walking around without safety and having to be wary of people because of how they're racialized, because of a system of white supremacy. So, yeah, no, that really reminds me of your story. And yeah, of course that kid felt safe because, not only people, your son wasn't just talking the talk, your son walked the walk, and there
were no parents around.
Right.
We weren't there saying, "Oh, go stand up for your friend." He did that on his own. He did that without us, and we got told about it by another kid who overheard it, who was like, "Yeah, this is what happened," because they came back to the house freaked out. And I mean, obviously, that's a traumatizing experience for that kid and for my son. And I was proud of my son, and I told him that too. Like I made sure that he knew how proud I was, and his mom made sure that she told him too. Like we made sure in that house that he was celebrated for doing that, and that is the acts you should be doing anytime that happens.
Yeah, and you're teaching people right here, Nick, that it's very important to have intentional, purposeful conversations with your children about discrimination, about bigotry, and having those conversations can result in exactly what your son did, taking action, having a moral compass that is activated in these situations so that they're not tacitly learning to accept these behaviors from bigoted people. And your son learned well. And the reinforcement that you gave him after, telling him that you're proud of him, reinforcing his actions. People who have grown up in white supremacist saturated environments who I've spoken to on this show have talked to me about how impactful that after the fact action was, where people are celebrating them fighting back against bigotry, how impactful that can be. So kudos to you, man, for doing your fatherly duties well. And I hope that other people who are listening to this, who maybe have some trepidation about having conversations with their kids, oh, they're too young. I have this conversation all the time with parents, racialized white parents especially, who tell me, oh, we don't really talk about it. They're kind of too young for that, or this and that. And I always say, well, little black kids are not too young to experience racism. They're experiencing it at your son or daughter's age, So you have to think about what it means that you're holding them back from the reality of other American kids' experience. Are you perpetuating white supremacy by doing that, or are you interrupting it? So, yeah, thank you so much for doing your part to interrupt, man.
Yeah. It feels weird to being thanked for just what I think should be the norm. To be honest, like I find it weird that I'm out here defending. Dude, I know. That's the freaking, like, I'm out here defending don't rape children. I'm out here defending be a good, like, just be a normal human being that can have a conversation. Like right now, what we need to do to grab hold of being able to not have to have these conversations all the time, like, is talk about it all the time right now. That's what we have to do. That's what we have to. We have to nonstop talk about it until it's so normal that we're like, okay, whatever. Like we don't need racism anymore. We don't. It's so outdated. Racism and bigotry are outdated. They're ugly. They're old. They're dying with the old. They should be dying with the oldest of the hate that is out there, and we can get rid of it. Like if I learned the K word for a Jewish kid growing up and having it used to get at me in my life, like it's not too early to learn.
100%. If that kid can learn to draw swastikas on his book cover, then yeah, we can teach people to respect human life and to reject human hierarchy. Absolutely. I think that okay, well, before I even go down that road, let me go back to my notes here, because you said something earlier that I want to kind of hone in on about teaching yourself to be empathetic. So on this show, I talked to a woman, an older woman who worked for various churches throughout the course of her life, um, as a pastor, as people, as supporting other congregations and whatnot. And she came on and she talked to me about her upbringing. She was a racialized white woman, and what she told me is that in her house, emotions were not even discussed, and that she actually didn't understand what emotions actually were well into her adulthood. And that what helped her kind of start putting the pieces together about emotions was living as a racialized white woman in a predominantly racialized black neighborhood when Dr. King was assassinated, and seeing the outpouring of emotion from her community members. And it was that kind of distinction between what she was seeing with that community and what she experienced throughout the course of her life that really got her curiosity up and made her realize that something was off with the way that she was raised. And that kind of moment of clarity, right, that you get from seeing something that's so disparate from your own lived experience, just like for you, right, going to college and meeting all these people from various different backgrounds that you've never been exposed to before, right? It sparks in people a curiosity. And sometimes it just makes people realize that something about their upbringing was off, was wrong, and it gets people again curious about investigating what that was. Ultimately, right now, most times that impetus for curiosity is a negative experience. And one thing that I want to do is change that into a positive experience, because it is possible to create that same catalyzation in a positive manner. It's just something that's so rarely done and not prevalent in our environment, that people think it's an impossibility. And people have become to think that naturally the way we learn is only by pain. That has become something that most people believe is the only way. And I'm out to prove that isn't the case, Nick. That is a big part of the work that I'm doing, is to show people that no, you can spark curiosity in other ways, many other ways that don't involve pain. And yeah, so what you said about teaching yourself to be empathetic, it kind of just reminded me of that conversation I had with that woman about emotion and the relationship between lack of emotional connection and white supremacy, which it encourages in people to make sure that you don't make that empathetic connection with people who are different than you, so that you don't see them as human, so that you can embrace the ideology that dehumanizes people. So what is your
Yeah.
reflections on that?
Yeah. And so I've had the luxury, again, with a stable household, was my mom is a psychologist, is a child developmental psychologist. And so I got to experience therapy in a lot of ways and learn how to talk about my emotions. Unfortunately, what that has done in some ways is I've become very analytical on my own emotions, and I tend to disassociate. And I've worked through that through years of therapy to be able to not do that as my like common and normal response or always response. But I learned to disassociate and like be like, okay, this emotion, I'm not really feeling it. And so I got I learned to be much more empathetic in college specifically. After I had shut down a lot of my like emotional goals, and it was coming to the end of my senior year and I was exhausted, and I didn't get into the um master's program that I wanted to. And I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I've got like 2 months left or whatever, but I have to figure something out. And I was super depressed. And that was probably the first time I ever had a suicidal ideation. And I was like, well, I really don't want to do that in the end. Obviously, I didn't. And I didn't try, which is good. But after that, I went back home and I was like, I have to do some. I have to find a purpose, because I'm just like I was tired. My body hurt, and I had some injuries when I was in playing soccer that healed but didn't always heal. Um, and I I was confused on who I was as a person.
Mm.
Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was coming out of like, what does it mean to be a functioning adult who now is going back to live at home? Like, I'm supposed to be a functioning adult and I'm going back to live with my parents. This is not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
um, and coming to the realization, like, I didn't get what I thought I was going to do at the end of all of this, and that kind of really sucks.
Yeah.
um, and I didn't want to feel like a failure on it. So I was like, well, I'm going to do something. And that wasn't kill myself. That was, I ended up being like, well, I've always thought I have a history of, we have a legacy of military in the family. Um, there My dad was in the army, my brothers were in the army, my sister-in-laws, my wife was in the army, I was in the army in the end. My uncles and cousins are army or navy, my grandparents were army or navy. Like,
Wow.
we have a proud legacy throughout history and since our family has been here. um, and so I was like, well, maybe they'll pay off my student loan debt and I can figure out what I want to do there. um, and so I did. I went in and I got into the intelligence field, and that was really where I really had to relearn, like, how to feel my own emotions through stuff and like experiences and failures and successes. Because once you get into basic training, it's, you fail. If you fail, it's your fault. Like, you have to kind of try to fail at basic training in a lot of ways. They give you a lot of the keys to success if you're just willing to take them. Um, but I learned how to fail a lot and learned how to work with people that I had not experienced at that time either, because I was a poor kid. Now I was now poor. I wasn't going to start asking my parents to pay for everything again. And I didn't want to rely on my parents, because I was like, to me, that's what a failure looked like, was I'm
Mm.
going to go home and live on my parents' couch and be a failure. That's what everybody said growing up was a failure, was what now we see are incels, are the kids who grew up, went back home, sat on their parents' couch, played video games, got rejected all the time. And instead of going, well, and I'm going to better myself as a result of all of this, they said, everybody else is at fault. And I think when I first thought about hurting myself was the first time I was like, like, truly, truly, like, I need to really understand what I'm saying and doing towards others. And it's taken me years and years and years to fix some of my um, mannerisms and cues and different things like that. But I put up I masked for a long time. So I stopped trying to feel emotions and I just pretended.
Mm.
Um, and then I eventually learned how to feel emotions again. And I was like, oh, I can actually let myself feel. And I think part of that is what you're talking about, is the white supremacy culture, or a lot of it is because it's that fake masculinity culture that you buy into. And so while I was in college, I bought into it. Like, even at a school of music, even at like, Carnegie Mellon's not a music college, but it has a school of music that is incredibly good. And I got a really good education. And you have to actually get into Carnegie Mellon itself too. Like, you're not just getting into the school of music, you get into the university first, which meant I had to keep all my grades up in high school. I couldn't relax while I was in high school. I got to college and I burned myself out because I completed college in 2.5 years. And
Wow.
then I just coasted for a year and a half. I literally did a year and a half I did a year's plus worth of schooling in one semester. I was taking a block of classes from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every single day.
Yeah, they're supposed to
And
stop you from doing that.
they're supposed to, but I was like, you know what, fuck you. Like, I'm going to do this. And I did. And I succeeded at it. Like, I did really well. But I burned myself out through it. And I relied on, at that time, much more for the recreational usages was I drank and partied.
Yeah.
And I used marijuana and I smoked and I enjoyed myself and I let myself go, but I became the the work or the doing the stuff instead of being me. Um, and so I just sort of shut down. And that was when I experienced a lot of people who didn't understand emotions, or how to talk to people or what correct words are in society, specifically not using the N word, or around Black people when you're white. I didn't do it, but this individual did quite a bit. Um, and they also threw around the K word every so often at a few of us who were Jewish. And I never enjoyed that. And I knew exactly what it felt like for Black people to be called the N word. And unlike the other Jews that we're seeing in, say, Israel right now, or in the government of Israel right now, where they did not learn the lesson of never again for all people. I was taught it as never again for all people. So we have to respect and uplift all people. Um, and so I think it's kind of like that. It's the liberation theology mentality almost of Christianity that's around, and practices like that where it's more about like social equity, and how do your actions actively uplift those around you. Stephanie Wilson did a really good interview, um, with a rabbi on Tuesday
Mhm.
that, she was talking about the liberation culture, and the liberation practices that she teaches, at a synagogue in North Carolina. You'd probably really enjoy the conversation. It's a lot about this type of like mentality and, like the and I guess that's where I learned it from, and how to get there. But like I shut myself down while I was in college so that I could have fun.
Mhm.
And I wasn't always a good person. We made fun of each other a lot in probably some homophobic, very homophobic, or, um, inappropriate ways. While we were around each other, we were sexist, and misogynistic. I mean, I was a young man who nobody said no to us, really. I never did anything like that. I never took advantage of people in that way. That was not who I was, and I was raised never to do that. Um, and I'm thankful I was never in a situation where I did anything like that. And I've heard plenty of stories of friends, close friends, who did have those things happen to them. And so I guess I realized and I knew the dangers of the culture that I was in, because Greek culture in college is very white
Oh
supremacist
yeah.
culture.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that said, in Pittsburgh, it's not quite as compared to other parts of Pennsylvania where
Mhm.
the KKK are from. In Harrisburg,
Mhm.
that's like the home of the KKK in Pennsylvania. And holy shit, are they have some uh, very white supremacist backgrounds to their,
Yeah. But
fraternities and
despite you
sororities.
being in the better parts, you still experienced a very similar culture, where you were able to kind of exist in a way where you were disconnected from your emotions. Just the fact that
Mhm.
you were able to exist that long for that period of time is a red flag for me right there. And then number two, your the misogyny that you mentioned, the homophobia, the racial slurs that were normalized in your communications, even if you didn't partake, yeah, it definitely is white supremacist coded, and I think a lot of people don't know how to connect that kind of social environment to white supremacist ideology because despite the fact that racial slurs are being used, right, like I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding, okay, I'm in an environment where racial slurs are being used regularly, where people are being kind of diminished, people's humanity is being diminished. But it's all, we're all joking, and it's, nobody's serious and everything's fine, and this is, it's sanitized, in a way that makes it invisible for people to actually see the ideology working on them for what it is. It's very insidious, isn't it?
It's very gaslighting too. It's very much a victimhood of the person who is the racist. Is, oh, you have to accept my views because everybody's views matter. We have free speech. We get to, it's all, a lot of times that it did come back to like, I get to say what I want because this is America and it's free speech, and I'm not being mean, I'm just joking, I'm trying to help. I have a black friend who said I could do it. Yeah, bro, is that black friend here? Can they vouch for that statement? Can they say that you can say that? And even if I had a black friend who's, and I've had a couple black friends who could say, you can say it as long as you don't put a hard R at the end. And I was like, yeah, no thanks. I don't
Yeah,
really want
no.
to say that. Like, I was like, that's not a word I care to say because I've had the equivalent thrown at me. Like, I don't want to, I don't normalize the K word, and I'm not going to say it or write it out. If you want to figure out what it is, people in the audience, if you don't know, look it up. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to say it.
Mm.
But I've had it said at me in the intent to diminish me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it feels terrible, right?
it fucking hurts.
Yeah.
Like, I was called a Nazi the other day, and that hurts. Like, and I know that that person was either a bot or has no real meaning to it, but it still hurts. I have family that was killed during the Holocaust. We learned growing up what the Holocaust actually meant. I went to, I guess, one of the biggest experiences I had growing up that really taught me about white supremacy was when I was in high school. It was my junior year, I think, right, my freshman year, freshman or junior. I had just turned 16, um, freshman or sophomore year. Sorry, I had just turned 16, and so we had gone to Germany for Christmas vacation as a family, and we went to Auschwitz, and I read every single plaque, every single one. My mom and I spent hours reading every single plaque. We went through every single building, including the gas chamber. And when I tell you what, that air changes and you can feel the oppression and death and anguish and sadness and hurt, it is palpable. It is ominous feeling. And like, I knew in my heart at that, like, after reading all of that, after having learned about it in the abstract of high school and through my parents and watching it on the History Channel when the History Channel actually showed history, or reading it and having my dad discuss it through his books and seeing like different war strategies that went around for World War II, because my dad was a war specialist. My dad was in the army and he was a war specialist on U.S. military history and Revolutionary and World War II. And I got to learn about it, and I still really value all of those experiences. And I still find new tidbits when I watch and view things about World War II history. But like, it's, you go there and if you're not changed by it, there is something misfiring for you. Like,
Yeah.
you have an emotional dysregulation that doesn't allow you to really feel anything, or you've been indoctrinated to not feel anything. If you could go to Auschwitz or Dachau or any of the others and not be changed.
Yeah. And
And
brother, I had a very similar experience going to the Holocaust Museum in the United States. And I was taught a significant amount about the Holocaust. And what's coming up for me as I'm hearing you talk is a recent trip that I took to DC that I planned for months to go visit the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC. And I've been to that museum before, and very similar experience to what you described, very emotional. You start in this basement level where, and they teach you all about the transatlantic slave trade, and the history of Native American slaughter, and you're just walking through dehumanization and just the heaviness, like you said, the oppression. You feel it, and you slowly start coming up, through the annals of history, if you will, and learning about all of the slave rebellions, all of the brutality, the people experienced, and all of the fight that people went through in order to try to create a more humane society.
I read, and I'll jump in for a second. Like, again, lucky was my high school. They gave us options to read certain, like, some books for AP English. I took an AP English course. I read Uncle Tom's Cabin, and that book is so hard to read, especially as this white kid who has no idea really what I was about to get into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't remember most of it, but I do remember, since the day I've finished reading it, and to this day, I still remember that it changed something in me, because it was so heavy in a different way. Like, we had read Elie Wiesel's Night about
I read it.
the Holocaust. And then I read Uncle Tom's Cabin, and I was like, wow, this has that same heaviness, but in a much, much darker, long running experience. And I was like, there's got to be something better. Like, we can do better.
Yeah.
And that was always, like, sort of like my thought on that after I got done reading something or listening to something. It's like, we can and must do better.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good reflection to have after that, and I agree, of course. That's why we're both here, brother.
Yeah.
But, going back to the African American History and Culture Museum, the museum was closed.
Why?
Because the government was shut down. Right. And so our months-long planning kind of went up in smoke. We still had a great time. We went to the Folgers Theater, learned some stuff about Shakespeare, saw a nice Shakespearean play rendition, and just enjoyed ourselves. But the fact that museum was closed, it wasn't accessible, the laws that have been passed about teaching race and whatnot, right? These are not laws that were passed to stop people from learning about the Holocaust.
No.
These are laws passed specifically to stop people from learning about racial hierarchy, its imposition into all of our institutions of power, and the brutality that resulted as because of those decisions. So it worries me, that there's really no 5-alarm fire for that, for the cutting off of access to the education that you receive for yourself that allowed you to come to a place of anti-racism, if I may put that label on you, of being an anti-racist yourself, someone who is willing to actively and intentionally fight against racial discrimination and bigotry, and ethnic bigotry as well, and religious bigotry in all forms, homophobia, transphobia, all of it. You had a path to get there through education, through these experiences, through your parents, right, through college, through all of these different experiences. And what we see is that the powers that be are snipping those pathways, severing them so that people cannot come to the place where you've come. And I first of all just want to again give you your flowers, brother, for creating those pathways for your own family, for first of all, your kids, and then for continuing to create it for people, anybody who's watching this live stream, and anyone who's going to come into contact with your sick of this show work. They're going to get those messages through the work that you're doing, because you are no longer someone who doesn't know who you are. You're someone who knows
Yeah.
who you are. You're someone who knows what your values are, and you're standing for them, man. So um, just thank you for that. And it is good to have people who are in this together, who have a strong sense of morality and justice, and know what kind of world that they want to create, one in which people's humanity is respected, that we learn the lessons of history, and that we carry those lessons forward into the future. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to work along. I'm glad to be here alongside people like you. Like I've gained the most from people who aren't like me throughout my life. So I don't want to cut that off. Like I've learned the most incredibly good lessons from people who don't look or act exactly like me. So
So
why
can I
would
ask
I
you a
want to
question?
like
So
yeah.
let me ask you a question then, because I think a lot of people, especially a lot of racialized white people, but people racialized in all other ways too, have a certain kind of fear of interacting with, of learning from people who are so significantly different from them, have a substantially different life experience for them. So, what would you tell those people who come to you with trepidation and fear about engaging in these kind of relationships where you're coming from different sides of the world sometimes?
Um I'd s- I'd say curiosity. If you're afraid of curiosity, then you've been robbed of a good experience. I guess what I'd say to them is, because I mean, I've had good and bad experiences from people of all walks of life. And I guess I would just say to them is people are people. Like that's who that's it. And especially in a place that wants to call itself a Christian nation, is I was taught the golden rule growing up: do unto others as you want done unto you. And so, would you, if you were to walk into a room and have to defend yourself and your autonomy or your individuality or your skin color or your race or your religion, if you had to defend that every single time you came into a room just because you existed, wouldn't you feel tired and beat down and angry and like oppressed? Well, that's what you're doing. And that's what I've sort of, it took me a while to figure that out. Like
Mm,
I I mean it did and it didn't, because I've experienced it a lot through my life. I mean, I've been bullied since I was a kid by adults because I was in the same position on a soccer team as somebody else's kid, and that person wasn't happy that there was competition for their child, even though we were good friends and
mm,
we made each other better because we competed with each other for the same team to make each other better. So it was not a net loss. It was actually a gain for both of us. And if only that parent had gotten out of the way and not been a dickhead and not needed to impose their self insecurities. And I think that's really what it comes down to is like, are you comfortable enough to question your own insecurities without calling yourself evil?
and just let's hold that right now, okay? Because that is such a very, very, very poignant point here. A lot of people cannot distinguish who they are from their thoughts. They think that they are the thoughts that they have. And
Hmm.
yeah, this is something that I'm trying to demystify for people. You are not your thoughts, y'all. All right. And we can't be teaching people that you're your thoughts. Your
Hmm.
thoughts do not make a determination of good or evil. What does make a determination of good or evil is how much weight you give your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which thoughts you give credence to and which thoughts you do not. That is who you are. That
Yep.
is the person you are. So that is something that is 100% within your control, and something that you need to take control of, and then make sure it's something that you can be proud of and you can say, this is who I am, and not feel any shame about it.
Yeah. Like thoughts are thoughts. Thoughts don't equate actions. Jack said it in our chat. And Jack, thanks for coming on the show on Monday with me and the team for Chronic illness discussion, because that's something that, like, having voices that I'm less familiar with and interacting with communities that I am not as familiar with is how I become better, because I've realized that it's not a it's the old adage of white supremacy is the idea of a pie, and every time somebody gets rights, your piece of pie gets smaller and smaller and smaller. My view is society is like a ever expanding bubble that can't burst. It can bend and flex, but it's always willing to grow. And sometimes it can shrink or feel like it's shrunk because your part of the bubble is now shifted, but you're within a bubble that is ever expanding, and rights don't take away from each other. Just because somebody has the same rights as you doesn't mean you're lesser, just means you have to compete more. You have to be willing to put more into it. You have to be willing to become an expert in your craft. And I sort of used it as a challenge to myself. I also now go through, or have gone through, like 2.5, almost 3 years, off and on years of emotional distress tolerance therapy, where one of the key learning tools is learning how to separate your thoughts and your emotions from your personality and
Mm.
from who you are. So, and I'm happy to discuss this anytime with people too, is, and I said it a lot to my group, but I, in my words, these are my words, so that it's not a disclosure of anybody's information or anything anybody ever said in group therapy. In my own words, is all of this is, you can take yourself. I do it. How I do it is I say there is smart Nick, dumb Nick, and nowhere Nick, just random Nick. I break it down in myself. It's okay to talk to yourself, people. Don't buy into the adage that you can't talk to yourself, or you can't have your conversation out loud with your dogs or your pets. I have my dogs talk for me. That's another way to do it, is I unemotionalize the thoughts, and especially if they're dumb ones, that stupid Nick would say, that I imagine, that I bucket into this little space and I say, this is a thought. Let's come back to it. Or this is a thought. Let's let it go down the stream. Let's let that one go. We don't need to think about that one. But some of them you need to think about, good or bad, because thoughts don't have feelings. You have feelings that you ascribe to your thoughts. A thought becomes bad when you go, that's a bad thought.
Right.
Like, I have thought before, when I was desperate and poor, maybe I should go rob a bank. A lot of people probably have. Or if you're ADHD and you have the intrusive thoughts of, I wonder what it would feel like to just walk out in front of this car and have it hit me. Or maybe I'm going to just walk out and, if they hit me, they hit me. Then they have to pay for my insurance. Those are intrusive thoughts. They're not bad thoughts. They're not good thoughts. They're not dumb thoughts. They're just thoughts. When you then disassociate them just enough from yourself, and this is where a little bit of disassociation helps, is you go, that was kind of stupid. Let's not act on that one. And then you move on. Or you have your dog go, oh, we should run in front of a car. That'd feel great. Let's go. No, dumb idea. And that's what I do, is I have my dogs talk for me. And I'm like, bros, just have fun. Just like relax a little. Let yourself remember that you matter too in all of this, and you can't beat yourself up on every single thought you have. But it's not okay to have the thought of, oh, I'm better than this person because they have a different skin color than me. Like, one, that's stupid. The color of your skin historically is based on where you were from regionally around the world, because melanin in the skin is based on how much light you absorb from the sun. So, of course, people who are closer to the equator have darker skin than people who are closer to the poles, because there's less sunlight at the poles and you need to be whiter to absorb more of it. Like, why would I be upset that somebody has a different color skin than me? Just because
we know the answer, right? Because there's a whole mythology out there
I
that
know
is counter to what you just talked about in terms of melanin, that gives a whole history of skin color, what it actually means, gives it a false meaning, so that people can believe that they are better than others because of their skin color, which is, of course, for you and me is absurd, but for many people, it's all they've ever known, and we've allowed for an environment to exist where it's all many people have ever known.
Yeah. And
So,
like and as a guy who has larger lips, who is not black,
mhm.
I was called in a very white area N-word lips Nick.
Wow, you left that part out.
Oh yeah. Well, I would just as we were going through all of this, I have spotty memories sometimes of my childhood. I
No,
think
no,
I
no, no, no.
blocked some of it out.
Listen,
But
bro, this
man, I
happens to
remember
everybody.
that
This
one.
happens to everybody. Like as soon as when we start talking about it, things pop up, man. Things
Oh
pop
yeah.
up. So yeah.
Yeah. Like that was a nickname I had.
Wow. Inward
So
lip
like I've
is
heard
brave.
things thrown at me, and I have a wider bridged nose. I have larger lips. I have very curly hair.
Mhm.
And so I've had it thrown at me, but I'm not the same skin color, so it didn't affect me in the same ways.
Yeah.
Not quite as much as hearing the K word does. Like that one hits
Yeah.
really
It's
hard.
at the core of your identity.
Um
Yeah. Hmm.
and but like I've had those words thrown at me in like a hurtful way, but I've come back at people and called them crackers and meant it
Hmm.
and meant what I said. And they knew because I said it in the way of you're a cracker,
Hmm.
you're a bigot. And
Hmm.
I'm not afraid to tell people that because I've been bullied so much. Like I'm so tired of being gaslit and bullied and told that I have to believe these terrible things about other people or like terrible things about that my daughter shouldn't have the same rights as my son or that this little black kid or a little Hispanic kid shouldn't have the same rights as my kids do. Like why? That's stupid.
Yeah.
Like to me, it's just stupid. And I think it's because I've had that same hate lobbed at me, but I've also didn't internalize it and I didn't let it turn me into a hateful person. I mean, I have had a lot of hate. I go to therapy for anger management. I've had anger issues. I learned a couple words that the army used, or folks in the army and family had used, how they explain people in the Middle East, and it's not a good word. It's not a good phrase either. It's the
Yeah.
sand N
And
word,
inward. Yeah.
and that's a really hateful phrase.
Yeah.
And I learned and saw these, and I mean, I grew up obviously during time of 9/11 and radical Islamophobia and the use of Judaism as a cudgel. I think that was really where it started to get to me, and all of it was being Jewish has been used as a cudgel to dominate people of Islam currently, and right now it's being used for a genocide
Yeah.
in Palestine. And I openly push back on Israel, and I don't. I've never been. I have family who live out there. I've never met, but I've never been. I never went on a birthright trip. I never had the radicalization experience like that. I'm glad I didn't. And I think what they're doing is super wrong because I was told never again for any people, and I took that to heart. Like it's and the easy choice in all of this has been after I learned how to evaluate my emotions and like really like become empathetic and self-healing and willing to go to therapy, gentlemen, men, go to fucking therapy, guys. Like, I know it's so demonized. Just go talk to somebody. Even find a male best friend. Make a male best friend who you can talk to, who you can say things. Even better, make a female best friend. And that's what I did a lot in college was I had more women and who were friends than men a lot of the time. Um, I was also in a school of music, so it was easy to have women who were friends because there was a predominantly higher number of them.
Right.
But I didn't take advantage of that situation. I may have tried to at times, and I look back on it and I go, yeah, that was pretty shitty. And I lost friendships because of some of my actions, and it's deservedly that I lost friendships because I didn't do the right things. And those people deserve to see me as the bad guy in the story for what I did. And for people who I hurt in college, if I ever said or did anything, especially if I was drunk, I'm really fucking sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Nick,
fuck.
what you're bringing up there is important because we've all made missteps. Like I've done things that I'm not proud of. I said things that I'm not proud of. I've definitely exhibited racism in my life as well. So I don't come on here as some kind of like priestly figure or something like that. Like I made
Yeah.
mistakes.
But I
I
think it's important that we acknowledge them. And that's because the problem is so many men are like, "Ugh, I'm gonna I've never made a mistake in my life. You're always wrong." Well, no.
yeah
Like you
yeah
have to be
it's not
willing
realistic,
to,
right?
yeah,
It's not
you're
human to never make a mistake.
yeah, to err is human. Like that's literally one of the most common philosophical statements ever was to err is to human. Descartes said it, I believe, and it was, yeah, you're or and I think therefore I am. Like you think you're going to err or you're going to do things wrong. It's okay as long as you're willing to self-evaluate, because racism and white supremacy specifically are built on not evaluating your faults
That's
in
right.
any way and putting them all on everybody else.
That's why
There's
we've got a
zero
president who's always got the
self-reflection.
best policies, the best this, the best that.
Only the best
Yeah. It's
people.
everybody
Arnold
else's
Palmer
fault.
was the biggest one I've seen.
Yeah. So yeah, just yeah. I mean, it's. I think that I have a lot of hope for the future, Nick, because um, people don't want to be miserable. you know,
Yeah.
people
I
don't
just
want
want nice things.
Yeah, people don't want to feel in turmoil all the time, inside and out. People don't want to feel unsafe. Ultimately, things will get bad enough where enough people will decide, okay, I can't accept this anymore. But ultimately, I can't wait for that, man. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I don't
I
want to
need
wait for
to,
people to get
yeah, yeah,
hurt.
yeah. I'm not waiting for people to be in a level of pain that makes them decide to act. Instead, you know, people who have values, people who have morality, people like you and me who have gone through the gauntlet of evaluating ourselves and trying to become better people and taking that on, living our values for the rest of our lives, and passing it down to our kids. In your case, um, people like us, it's really incumbent upon us to help other people, I believe, down the same path of self-reflection, of enlightenment of the world around them, of demystifying things that they're afraid of, of letting go of white supremacist culture. And I think that
And not
um,
taking it personally.
what'd you say?
And not taking it personally
What do you mean by
while
that?
they're doing it. People take white cultures. It feels like, from someone who sees white culture all around all the time, is it feels like everybody takes it personally. Like we've talked about, like there's no distinction between ideology and personhood or personality for some of these folks. So they take it as an attack and an affront when you talk about the ideas around racism or bigotry or white supremacy. They see it as an attack because they've been taught that as like that's what their personality needs to be like.
Hmm.
And that's, I think one of the things that I've learned that I like to do, is talk about personality and just letting yourself be yourself and being creative and expressing yourself. And it's okay to cry and it's okay to have healthy emotions and talk to people, because I can separate my personality from my ideas and my ideology. And we have to figure out how to break that portion of it because it's a deconstruction. They're in a cult. It's a
Right.
white supremacy is a cult. And we have to look at it that way so that we can deconstruct it. And like, it's really hard because I like, it's really hard to get that separation for people until they can see it themselves. And that's, I think, what we're, like you said, that's what we're seeing is, but there's ways to get people to see it themselves without having to physically experience it too. Like,
Exactly.
it,
Exactly. That's the work that I'm doing, brother. What you're describing there in explicit detail is exactly the work that I'm doing, creating an environment where that realization can happen, that separation can happen, where people can. And what it is, what happens, Nick, and you tell me if this is accurate from your perspective. When you have that separation, it can be quite empowering, actually. While you may feel grief of losing what you thought was some part of you, right, but really wasn't a part of you, you know, that can be a grieving process that you go through of, but then ultimately you'll realize that you didn't actually lose anything. You're
yeah,
actually gaining something. And you're gaining the ability to live and experience the world fully, more fully than you were when you believe these false things about yourself, right?
yeah,
And it's very difficult to get people to understand what's on the other side there, while they're still, on the side where you were when you were kind of, down on yourself and feeling this heaviness and whatnot. To get people from here to there, yes, it's only them who can do it, right? They've got to be the ones to take off the glasses, right, of white
yep,
supremacy. And but there are ways of creating an environment, an experience, where people are more likely to engage in taking that off, to feel safe enough to take it off, to feel vulnerable enough to recognize the truth that they are not their thoughts, that there is a separation between their personality and their ideology.
one way to do that I've found is you have to take a stand and live by it in a way that impacts someone in what are called natural consequences. The consequence to the action has to be a natural consequence that could have happened by that action. Like when you when you discipline a child, um, and say they were getting rowdy on their bicycle and they were throwing water balloons at cars and they were getting rowdy or something. And there
Mhm,
was no reason they should have been done it, but they were causing danger.
mhm,
Is a natural consequence to take away their tablet or their phone, or is it to take away their bicycle and say you're not allowed on your bike for a week? Well, a
mhm,
more natural consequence would be take away the bicycle.
mhm,
We need to incur those types of consequences on people. So if somebody goes past your boundaries, you have to put a consequence on them for that action. My wife and I did this with someone in our family. Um, and this person had never had anybody say no to them in a meaningful way
mm,
and live by it. And this goes into the white supremacy because that's really what a lot of it is white people, especially white people, have been told, never been told no in a meaningful way because the law allows them to get away with it. The situation always allows them to get away with it. The media allows them, whatever, what have you. White people just aren't held to the same level of consequences and standards that other people are. And it's
mhm,
okay to admit that. It's also okay for me to use that and wield that in a good way, and that's what I'm trying to do. Um, but the individual in the family was going to discipline our son in a way that we would never do. And we said no. And it was in their house, not ours, but we said, no, you will not do that. And if you threaten to do that or try to, we will leave and you will not see us or these people, our children who are this ex relationship to you in the family, you won't see them again until you're willing to apologize. And we left. We left and we didn't come back. We waited until they apologized. And
How
guess
long
what?
did it take out of curiosity?
It took, well, it took about 6 months, I think it was.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
But we also left for a little while. So that's not a fair assessment. I would say closer to probably like 2 or 3 months. Um, but like the the privilege around it was a male family member who had never been told no in a disciplinary situation around a kid, and we said no. We said our son doesn't know you like that. We don't interact with our children in that way to punish them, and you won't do it to ours. And so we left and we stood by it. And it wasn't my decision, it was my wife's decision, which was more impactful because it was part of her family.
Hmm.
And we were we just up and left, and we didn't say another word. After, we didn't fight, we didn't argue, we did what we were going to do. We walked out, we drove our car away, and didn't look back.
And you
And
stood
it
on your
took the
values.
time, and it took time, and we wanted to go back and see them. We love them, we still do. We actively love them now because we have a very, very good relationship with them. And it was because we said no. It was because we put a limit down that nobody else ever had. And we stood by our business and we said, yes, this is how we want to do it. This is what we value. And if you want to see us, you need to also respect our values. And they did. And we have never had an incident again. We've never had that same incident. We've never even seen it for anyone else. We put that, I think, to rest just because of our action. And they self evaluated. And we have conversations all the time about differing political opinions and differing views. And I have not cut them out of my life fully because I'm never going to, I have a really hard time cutting people out of my life.
Mhm.
At the same time, there are some people that are worth just letting go for a while and being like, I'll come back to you when you're ready.
Well, aside from whether it's like worth letting them go or not, I think that what you said earlier about values is the most important part, which is that when someone shows you that they're not aligned with your values have to you have to stand for them. You have
Yeah.
to stand for them. And so you
If
chose
you
to
don't
stand
stand
for
for
them.
anything, you fall for everything.
That's right. That's right. And also it goes back to what we were talking about in terms of the person you are. You know, the person you are is the person who shows up living your values. That is who you are. So if you're not going to stand up for your values, then who are you? You're a person who is capitulating to other people's values, and you're taking on other people's values. You're basically a puppet, you know?
Yeah, and it's good to learn from other people's values, and it's good to take ideas and thoughts. And I know, Will, that's not, you weren't saying don't learn from other people's values. You're saying exactly the opposite, is learn from them and don't absorb them fully as your own. Take them into practice. At least that's what I'm saying, is I took them into practice. Like, I'm willing to listen to people who I disagree with vehemently. I may just call you something really inappropriate to your face, but you may deserve it. Because my thought process has become, is if somebody's willing to spew hate unadulterated and just openly, why can't I do the opposite? Like, why is there such a void? Why? And you talk about going from what should be done to what is being done. What I kept asking myself was, where are all the men in the podcasting sphere who have values, who don't suck, who don't tell boys that they have to be like yelling and vicious and rude all the time, and that they have to compete over everything? Like, where are these men? Why isn't anybody doing this? And then I lost my job over the summer. And I was basically, well, I guess I can do this
Yeah,
now.
it's you.
Let's stop being the asker of who's going to step in. And I gave myself permission to be a man with a microphone, be a white man with a microphone and advocate for ideas that didn't suck. And I was
Nice.
sick of the shit. So I was like, I'm going to just start a publication called Sick of the Shit, and I'm going to roll with it. And I wrote poetry, and I just got loud. And I realized it feels good. I realized again, because I had to deconstruct the tech industry very quickly, because that's such a fucking
Yeah.
gross patriarchal piece of crap, white supremacy society, basically, all in
Yeah.
itself. Is I had to break all of that down and just go, it's okay to say the right thing. Yeah, that Chris says in the question, if not me, then who? If not when? If not now, when?
When, yeah.
Like, so I finally said, I'm here. And the best people I've ever worked with, Natasha, you said something about women in tech here, is you women have been the most impactful people in my life in tech, because they have shown me how to go through adversity. They have shown me caring and compassion, and they taught me how to actually live with my emotions and continue to function in my role while learning that I had to abdicate everything else at home to do what I was doing.
Mm.
And it there are great humans, but right now it's tech is move fast, break everything, and I cannot be a part of building a system that is trying to break everything, because
Ironically, Nick, that's the reason I left education. Yeah.
is like I just I just want to be in a place that is that treats people the way I want to be treated. And I want nice things. Like I keep coming back to that thing. It's like I just want nice things because I'm worth the investment as a person. I have value as a person inherently. And if you're religious, especially if you're Christian, how can you go about life claiming that you're made in God's image and all people are made in God's image, and then you go around and oppress them? How can you do that and call yourself Christian or Jewish?
By lying to yourself.
You're lying to yourself. Like,
It's actually quite easy for people,
oh, I
unfortunately.
know it is. That's the problem. And but so I gave myself permission, in the roundabout way of all saying that is I gave myself permission to come on a podcast and just start talking my views. Like my wife also kept telling me, I'm tired of hearing you talk at me. Go talk at other people. And so I did. So I talked at other people, and then I found some friends on here who wanted to talk with me about these things. And like Walter Ryan, like Walter's someone I've learned a lot from. He's someone who's actively deconstructing and has deconstructed white supremacy and is such a great example of how to do it and how to be an emotionally intelligent man, and show intelligent masculinity, and get away from these tech bros and whatever bros and yada yada yada, but also have a space where men feel comfortable coming to talk. Like you have to men need a space that is inclusive for us, not because there's an isolation crisis among men that anybody else caused. Men caused the male loneliness epidemic.
100%.
I don't take any offense when, like, that's the easy thing, and it's hard to get there though. I think is the part.
Well, you need
It's
time,
so hard
right?
to get there. Yeah, you need time, and we have to do it so fast right now, or we feel like we do, because we're so convinced by the media that there's so many MAGA and like ultra racists out there, because that's who they present all the time, and people are coming out of the woodwork. There are also still so many people who just really don't know, because they've never been taught otherwise. They have no other experience. They have no other external tool that says there's a better way. And if we just show them that way, we fill that void of dumb men coming on podcasts and saying dumb shit, and
Yeah.
instead we fill it with intelligent men coming on podcasts and saying smart shit, and we
And
just
I'm
do
going
it
and
relentlessly.
I'm going a step further than the podcast space, brother, because I think you're exactly right. We need to show people that there's a better way, that there's another way, even. And yeah, but I think
And in
ultimately,
all spaces, in your workspace, in your home
exactly,
space, in life, that's
it's
really
got
it.
to
You
be
have
in
to do
life.
it at home.
Exactly, it's got to be in life. I think that it may be true that those who are promoting white supremacy as an ideology and other forms of bigotry, a lot of them are in the tech space, right? A lot of them are in charge of tech. A lot of them are in positions of power. So I don't think that we can necessarily rely on those same avenues that are being utilized to promote bigotry to actually disarm it. I think that we as people who have or are in the process of deconditioning ourselves, we need to figure out that we have a different kind of power than these people. It's a power that they don't have any idea of, and they don't know how to utilize, and they won't know how to fight. But we need to consolidate it, and we need to activate it and make it into an offensive weapon. That is what we haven't done yet. And yes, I think one way of doing it is what you're saying, by flooding the podcast space with people who talk about values, people who talk about, we need a Mr. Rogers podcast space. You know what I'm talking about?
Basically, yeah.
That's what we need. But I think that even more important than that is the power that individuals have within their own social circles to live their values. Just by doing that, it's even more impactful than creating a whole space in a podcast space, I believe.
A great example
Please.
is if you live in a small town and you say you have kids, and or in a town of any size, doesn't matter. If you live in a town of any size and you have kids and you're a dad and you have values and you believe in nice things and you believe people deserve rights and people should be treated as other people and that there shouldn't be these terrible distinctions and otherings, go volunteer to coach for your kid's soccer team or basketball team or athletics, their sporting event, or Boy Scouts if they're in Boy Scouts, or Girl Scouts if they're in Girl Scouts. Go volunteer as the person in charge. That way, the people who are dictating the conversations towards your children when they are very impressionable is someone who has values. I grew up in spaces where boys had value-based teachings from male adults who volunteered their time. I was a Boy Scout. I was in soccer. These were boys' spaces because I was on a boys only team for soccer. That's kind of how we do those things. And Boy Scouts was male only at the time. And that was a good thing at the time because I had a troop that had good role models. And you can be a role model online, which is fine, which is what I'm trying to help do, is be a role model online. But I'm also being a role model, like Will keeps saying, you keep saying to everyone and me and reminding me of, is you have to be a role model in real life. You cannot just say the things. You have to get to the point where your kids go out and their friend gets called the N-word or some racial slur, and they instantly respond without you being there as, nah, we ain't going to do that. That's not how we speak to each other. That's not how we talk to other people. That's not how we value somebody. And then you've done right. When your kid does that without you being there, you are actively teaching what it looks like to be anti-racist, to be anti-white supremacy. If you can break the emotional or the generational trauma of white supremacy, we can have nice things. And that's what I want my kids to know, is it doesn't matter White, like, it doesn't matter what you look like, as long as you want nice things, and if it makes you a better person, it's worth pursuing. And white supremacy and bigotry and Christian nationalism and fascism don't bring you nice things. They don't make you happy. They take from your happiness and they don't add to it. And I want a world where things add to my happiness, because I was promised the pursuit of happiness in this country, and I cannot pursue happiness if I am under the threat of fascism.
100%, man.
Like the basic US history, under threat of fascism, that is not freedom.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think that's a really good place to end this, Nick. It's been a real pleasure having you on. You know, this conversation was so interesting, like in so many ways. It really kind of didn't necessarily go the way that I thought it would, but I am actually really happy about that, because
Awesome.
I got to hear all about, you know, the way that you're showing up in your life, living your values, which was a pleasure. I got to hear all about your journey, and one thing I want you and the audience members to reflect upon as they walk away from this conversation. I mentioned to you that I wanted you to think back before college, right? But it's hard, right? It's hard to kind of think back to your childhood and think about what you experienced and then kind of impose your framework of the world that you developed as an adult onto that, right? Especially because of our memories and how they work as well. But you did such a good job. I'm so glad you shared with us a story about the book cover swastika. I'm so glad you shared with us, um, you know, from that story all the way to what your own kid is doing. You know, I mean, it really kind of gives a nice narrative for people to see that it is possible to grow. You know, it is possible to change. It is possible to deconstruct our internalized white supremacy that all of us have if we grew up in this country. And thank you for doing the work. Thank you for being a guest on the show and for sharing your journey with us. I really appreciate it, man. And I can't wait to continue this work alongside you, man.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Thank you for inviting me, Will. This has been such a pleasure. Um, I've really enjoyed this, and it's gotten me to remember some things about my past that I haven't thought about in a long time. So thanks for this opportunity, and I look forward to working alongside you too, and speaking to you more here in the near future too, because I love this conversation
Yeah.
and this kind of thing.
Cheers. Well, guys, if you are interested in future conversations, you know what to do. You can follow me on here. I will be having more of these conversations here on Substack, also on my Twitch channel for anybody on Twitch who's watching. And also want to give you your flowers, man, for helping me with the restream thing, so I can stream on both platforms. That's been great. And guys, this opportunity for discussion about race is open to all of you guys. Okay, you guys are all welcome on here. The only requirements are two: one, an open heart; two, an open mind. That's it. That's it. Okay, so if you have that, you want to come on, just go to my website, www.thecontrabandwagon.com, and then there's a submit application button there. You can reach out to me. I'll get back to you via email, and we'll schedule a 30-minute Zoom call where I'll give a little bit about background about the show. You can ask me any questions. We can collaborate upon what we might discuss during the 2-hour live stream, and then we'll schedule a date and time for your live appearance. Okay, just like Nick, the same process Nick went through. And yeah, I can't even express my gratitude enough. Thank you so much, man. And thank you for all those who were tuning in. I didn't actually get to see the comments. I thought they were going to populate here, but I guess I still have some tech.
Oh, they don't auto-populate in Restream. You actually have to pull the Substack Live link itself. It's kind of I can show you more too.
Yeah, you're gonna have to show me.
I love doing it. I love helping teach. That's something I've learned I like doing a lot.
Well, I appreciate it. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time on the Contraband Wagon, where I'm changing the conversation on race. Be well, take care, and stand for your values out there, guys. All right. So long, Nick. Be well, okay?
Thanks, Will. I appreciate it.
I have no idea how to stop this.
Oh, hit in the top right-hand corner. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
You can.
All right, y'all.